Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to another live this morning. Hope you're having a great start to your day. We certainly are. And we're looking forward to our little time together. And we love saying hello to a few friends. And okay, so who's up? Mike from Norland. First up, Brahim. Number 2, Portland, Oregon. Mike and Brahim, you guys. Wendy, how are you? 2 Wendy's in a row. Good morning. Eric from Ottawa. And Linda. Oh, how much we love those Lindas. Mary, Norwich. And Louise, how you doing? And Kevin from Oshawa. Nativity, good morning. And Nina from Chatham, Kent. Nick from our staff, good morning. Jeanette, good morning. And Nelly and Yolande, bonjour. Fran from Orangeville. And Donna from Park Hill. And Donna from Bell Valley. And Shirley from Newfoundland. Vince, how are you? And another Linda. Cecilia, Nouveau-Brunswick. Huguette, bonjour. Deb from Timmins. Huguette was from Hearst, I think. Angèle, P-E-I. Guylaine from Hearst. Donna from Newfoundland. John, our friend from Elgin, Illinois. Jeanette, how you doing? Veronica. And Anne, hello. We love you guys. Thanks for coming on. Debbie, Sturgeon, Evangeline, and Lori, Niagara Falls, and Kevin. Coffee's brewing, Kevin says. Catherine, Newfoundland. Gary, Bolton. Okay, couple of more and let's get going. Claudette, from Sudbury, Marine, Penticton, British Columbia. Dave, Muskoka. Leela from Verner. Nice to have you on. Shelley from Baxter. 2 more. Carol from Moncton, New Brunswick. And Michelle from Tennessee. Okay, Julie, you too. And Tammy. And Bonnie. And anybody that I missed, Joanne from Eganville. Okay. Now, guys, I read an article, okay? Yesterday, I think. Yeah, yesterday. Okay? And it was an article that came out, and it was, at least where I saw it, was National Public Radio. So it was actually written out, probably did an interview, and they actually transcribed it. And I read that article. And here's the headline of the article. And then we'll sort of break this down a little bit, talk about it today, because it's so relevant. Here's what it says. Okay? Patients say keto. Okay, so the keto diet. Patients say keto dieting helping with mental illness. Okay, and here's the article. Here's the headline. So patients say keto helping with mental illness. Science is racing to find out why. Okay, science is racing to find out why. So this morning, I want to talk to you about that. I want to talk about mental illness. And remember, there was some huge headlines, not last summer, the summer before, that it was just rapid. And it talked about, Alzheimer's not being plaque orientated, and because that's the medication that was coming out was to get rid of plaque and in the brain. And then they said, look, it's been a colossal failure. So they said they were on the wrong road. And then they said bipolar. What they knew about bipolar wasn't right. And then they talked about depression. And it really wasn't a neurotransmitter problem. So, I mean, that should have turned medicine upside down. I mean, really, with those headlines coming out on Alzheimer's, on bipolar, and on depression, it should have really shook the tree of medicine and said, man, we're on the wrong path here. So this article is talking about people. It's anecdotal to some extent because they're saying, look, I did the keto diet. Keto, by the way, guys, is just low carb. Well, it's low enough, really. If you're going into ketosis, okay, remember, there's a lot of people get scared with that word, but it's because they don't understand it. Or they confuse it with ketoacidosis, which it isn't at all, okay? It's ketosis, meaning your body is burning fat as a fuel as opposed to carbs. And if you lower your carbs enough, your body will burn ketones. And patients are saying, I'm just quoting the article, patients are saying that going into ketosis is helping them mentally. People with previous mental health problems are finding that the diet, their change in the way they eat, laying off carbohydrates, is helping them, okay? Is helping them. So let's unpack this a little bit today, okay? Why would it be helping them? Why would it be helping them? And SSRIs, okay, serotonin uptake medication. And this was, again, go back and it talked about this being, really not successful. They might work temporarily, but they don't always work. And they seem to have a shelf life, okay? They have a shelf life, like meaning that after a while, even though people stay on them for years, they really don't work very well. Their success rate, it's not like, man, one thing, okay? It's like, let me give you an example. You're a diabetic, okay? One thing about insulin as a medication, it can save your life. Now, we're going to talk about that because this is connected, okay? This is connected. But, and I'm not against medication, guys. If medications work, then take them, Like me and antibiotics. If you need an antibiotic, it could save your life, for heaven's sakes. I'm not against that. I'm all for it. But I'm a guy that likes to get at the root cause of things. And so today, I am going to give you my 2 cents worth when it comes to mental health. And it's based on my experience, okay? Based on my experience. So, when When someone suffers from mental health, again, if they're really upside down, SSRIs, look, if they temporarily help, but in the long run, they're not that effective. And the reason is because they're looking for love in all the wrong places. And I didn't say that. Science has said that. They're not effective, really. And it's not getting at the root problem, okay? And that's why they don't always work, and that's why often after a period of time, they're very ineffective. Well, as a matter of fact, I'll give you a study that came out a couple of years ago that talked about exercise. Just vitamin E, the real vitamin E, exercise, is better. They've shown this in studies, better, more effective than SSRIs. Because, in my opinion, we're looking at a metabolic problem. A metabolic problem. And when someone is schizophrenic, bipolar, depression, severe depression, they have a metabolic disorder. It's just manifested in another way. So let's go back a little bit. Metabolic. You and I talk about it every day. Metabolic syndrome. Okay? What's the root cause of metabolic syndrome? What's the root cause? Insulin. Insulin resistance. It's primarily a food problem. So that's metabolic. It's how your body uses energy. And when people, their weakness, okay, we all have weaknesses. Okay? The canary in the coal mine for people that suffer with mental illness, schizo, bipolar, depression, severe anxiety. There's a big energy problem, in my opinion. The brain is an energy hog. We've taught this many a time. It's only 2% of your body weight, and yet its headquarters, it's the central government, and it needs 25% of your energy. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. People that suffer with mental illness, including Alzheimer's, people suffering from mental illness, including Alzheimer's, they don't process food properly. They don't. Their energy up in the headquarters, they're swimming. It's like you're swimming in the Atlantic Ocean, yet you can't drink the water. Do you know what I mean? You can't drink that salt water. You can't, it'll kill you. You can't stay alive on that salt water. Yet you got an ocean full of it. But you can't take it. Right? It's the same thing when you look at mental illness. I don't want to minimize mental illness at all. I'm not. I'm telling you that the newest research, and they're saying here, okay, let me give you the back part of the quote. Science is racing to find out why. Why is going into ketosis effective in mental health? Why are patients saying that? You know what? Less brain fog, less depression, less bipolar. Look, that's what the article said. And there are doctors now that are really looking into metabolic syndrome. You know, metabolic syndrome can affect your liver. Okay. It can affect your heart, obviously. It can affect your joints. It can affect your skin. It can affect, you name it. One of the places that it affects is the brain. What do we call Alzheimer's? What was it called in 2005? Type 3 diabetes. Diabetes of the brain. Some people get, an overall diabetes, but some people remember what we constantly bring home is we tell people the last thing that's going to happen to a person is diabetes. It's not the first thing to happen. It's the last thing to happen. Where they can actually take their blood sugar and they got elevated blood sugar. It's the last thing because everything in your body fights high blood sugar because it's so destructive. But in the meantime, changes occur. When your body is using insulin over and over again, and your body develops insulin resistance, that can affect people in different ways. Lack of energy and, obesity and, look. But the brain is headquarters, guys. And when you don't process glucose properly, when you don't process it properly because of insulin resistance, a couple of things happen in the brain. One, you create an inflammatory response in the brain. High insulin, insulin resistance, inflammation of the brain. It's silent. You don't know what's happening. And different strokes for different folks. People react to that differently. In the long run, Alzheimer's. I remember, let me see if I can find it. Schizophrenia. I remember reading this. I looked at it recently and I'll see if I can find it in my notes here. Okay, let me connection between diabetes and depression, okay? Schizophrenia, 3 times more likely to develop diabetes. You know what I say? They're already diabetic. It's just that they don't know it yet. Okay? Schizophrenics are 3 times more likely to become diabetes. Okay? Heart disease. If someone is depressed, the risk of a heart attack goes up 50%. What's the connection? Bipolar and schizo. 53% more likely to have premature heart disease. What's the connection? Inflammation. Inflammation. What's the connection to diabetes? Insulin resistance leads to inflammation. It can affect a person in different places. And because medicine, look, God love them, okay? But listen, when it comes to mental health, they really, I don't want to rain on the parade of psychiatrists or psychologists or whatever, but really, we have more depression today than ever before. It's an energy issue. It's headquarters. Energy, big problem. It can't metabolize properly. And it can manifest itself in different ways. That's why people that have tried the keto, that's why people who have tried the reset, when they lower their insulin resistance, a lot of people have said, it really has helped me with my depression. It's really helped with my bipolar. Makes sense, doesn't it? It makes sense. So, we're trying to connect the dots, okay? And one of the things that they've found, especially with elevated insulin, is the brain doesn't go into autophagy like it usually does. You know about autophagy, the self-cleaning oven of your brain, okay? And it won't work if you're not sleeping. Okay, you got to get your sleep. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a second, because I want to talk to you about a second factor. One of the factors for sure is insulin. When your insulin's elevated, even your autophagy of the brain won't work as well. The self-cleaning oven. Okay? Now, let me get into, so one of them is food. Okay? And more research needs to be done, but I'm convinced that there's a huge connection between carbohydrates and crappy carbs and those crappy oils, the middle aisles of the grocery store, and the amount of depression that we're seeing today. Okay? So the best thing that could happen is that they would change their food, change their fuel. You know me and changing fuel. Change your fuel. The wood stove. What's better, paper and twigs? You want to heat your home with a wood stove? Nah, you better have some logs. That's eggs, meat, and cheese. Logs are eggs, meat, and cheese. That's why I'm so big on it. And then you will be burning ketones, fat as fuel. Best fuel in the world. 99% octane. Okay? Got it? Okay. Now, the second factor, and I want to talk about this too, is cortisol. Okay? Cortisol. And it used to be, think of cortisol, okay? It used to be run, Forrest, run. Remember Forrest Gump? Run, run. What are you doing? Running. Run, Forrest, run. So cortisol is the flight or fight. Okay? So think about it. Cortisol is used to when you're like that. But you see, today we don't do that. We don't run, right? We don't use the fight or flight unless someone is you're out in the back alley at late at night and you hear footsteps and you say, "I'm running, man." Okay? You're taking off. But today our world has changed, and I probably don't talk about this enough, okay? Because I talk about the fight or flight being like this, like you're uptight. And the way we don't, the fight or flight cortisol elevates your adrenaline, and your body is into a hyper state in order to protect yourself. It's God-given. The problem is if that doesn't get turned off. Now think about this for a minute. Okay? Think about this. Today, what happens? We don't run. It's not run, Forrest, run. We get angry. We get overwhelmed. We're full of fear. Fear. It's unreal. The amount of fear and anxiety today. So, go back, and I'm not saying it was always around, but today, because we don't move very much, we are a sedentary people compared to what we used to. You could almost, with cortisol, you could work it off. But today we don't. So we keep it inside. And a lot of people do this. They're angry. They're, like my mom used to say, their blood's boiling. It's just sort of seeping there, ready to explode. And we're overwhelmed. You know how many people I've talked to? They're just overwhelmed with life. And the amount of fears that people have is incredible. It's almost like we got fear on steroids. Young people with anxiety. And I think a lot of it is they're playing with their phones all day long, and, they're not as active or whatever. And I'm not saying it's everything, but it's certainly a big factor. So what we have an energy problem, food, misplaced, not processed properly in the headquarters. You have cortisol. Remember when I wrote the book, 2 Hormones That Want You Dead? Insulin and cortisol, 2 hormones that want you depressed. How do you like that? I like that. There are 2 hormones that want you depressed. Insulin, food. Cortisol, stress, wants you depressed. The Bible says, that anxiety leads to depression. Yep. If you don't turn that anxiousness off, it can send you into a major depression. That's been my experience of tens of thousands of patients over the years. The good news is, guys, the good news out of this is this. There are steps that we can take, okay? Let's put medication over here. We'll just put it over here. I'm not saying don't use it. I'm not saying to temporarily not use SSRIs. I'm only giving you stats that they're not effective, very effective in the long run. I know that's not going to change. I'm not trying to change the narrative. I'm trying to give information, educate people so that they have education, provides a person with power. I just like people where they, you guys, why do I call you the greatest audience in the world? Because you listen, Linda. You listen, Larry. And you're okay, you know what? But guys, look, cortisol in combination with insulin is a bad combo when it comes to mental health. They're saying the science is racing to find out why ketosis works. Well, guys, it shouldn't surprise them, okay? Because I can bring you back into the 1920s, probably even earlier than that, when they actually used ketosis, a ketogenic diet, high fat, no carbs, for epilepsy. It was the treatment of choice. It was fantastic. And that sort of just it's amazing. Once the pharmaceutical industry got involved, well, now you got to take a drug. There's no more, you can't just rely on a diet. Right? And unfortunately, and, I think any medical doctor would tell you this, what do I know about nutrition? So when you hear the word ketosis, it scares the living life out of doctors, most doctors. They don't even know. All they can think of is when they learn that, oh, ketoacidosis, that a diabetic ever goes into ketoacidosis, they're going to die. Yeah. Yeah, but that's not, a low carb diet would put you into ketosis. You're just burning a better fuel. So fuel, cortisol, which, it just, the stress hormone is a major, major factor. Now, let me just give you a couple of other things, because really we could do a week long on mental health. At least every day we could do it. But for now, let me just give you sort of a protocol that I would recommend, that I used to give my patients, and with some very, very, very good success. Okay? And again, I always sent my patients home with a plan. I never gave them a plan to fail. I gave them a plan to succeed. Something doable. Okay? I used to tell my patient, I'm on your side. Okay? I want this to succeed. You need accountability, I'm going to make you accountable. Okay? That's what I used to do. And my experience, here's what I found out. Okay? Here's what I found out over the years. Okay? Put people on the reset 30 days. It's amazing. It lowers that insulin. So we're talking about it lowers insulin. It lowers insulin resistance. Okay? It's a 30-day program followed by a low-carb diet, a ketotic diet, preferably ketosis, meaning that your body is burning fat. And if you keep your carbs, there's different strokes for different folks, but, between about 20 to 50 grams of carbs. That's not a lot of carbs, okay? That's not a lot of carbohydrates. But that's when you implement the plant kingdom and you have some fruits and vegetables. But you're laying off, you really got to get, and I'm not saying it's easy, but I'm telling you, you're laying off the pasta, the rice, the cereals, the sugar, the sweets, the pastries. No more muffins, no more bagels, no more cereals, no more milk. Okay. No juice at all. It wasn't easy, but it was doable because you're not hungry, first of all, not. Okay, so the reset followed by a very low carbohydrate diet. Okay? I found great success with that. Number 2, I would lower their cortisol. Okay? Now, you lower cortisol when you sleep. You don't sleep, your cortisol goes up. Your cortisol goes up, you don't sleep. So I put them on our cortisol formula to balance that, to lower the cortisol, because it had a big effect on the mental health. Okay? So that's what I would do. 1, insulin. 2, lower cortisol. Vitamin E, of course. Exercise, walking, whatever, really helps too. Okay? Lowers cortisol. Helps with insulin. Now, deficiencies. Okay? Because I used to test for this in my office, so I knew what they were deficient in. The things that I was most interested in. What are you deficient in? Here's what I found consistently in mental health. Okay? Schizo, bipolar, depression, severe anxiety. Here's what I found. Low levels, you guys will know this because you're already ahead of me thinking about this. They're low in B12. B12, neurological, they were low in B12 almost invariably. And doctors don't connect your brain to your B12. They should. They should, but they don't. Okay? B12, all they can think of is anemia or whatever. And so they don't worry about it. And, unless you're extremely low, but I don't equate that with mental health. The other one, you know this one, the sun, vitamin D. They were always, always, always low. It's a metabolic factor. So is B12. It's a metabolic factor. It's very much connected to insulin. It's very much connected to cortisol. Vitamin D. They were low. I can't even think of once where I saw an opposite to that. B12, vitamin D, magnesium. Very deficient. And look, the way they test magnesium in blood, I don't like that. Okay? I don't like the magnesium because what is it? 1 or 2% of your magnesium is in your blood. The rest of it is in your tissue. It's not in your blood. Who cares? So when they say, oh, your magnesium levels are good, if they test them, who cares? It doesn't mean anything. There's very little magnesium in your blood. I found people were extremely low in magnesium. Vitamin D, B12, magnesium. And then I got to tell you about this because I've connected this for so many years. The gut-brain connection. Leaky gut, leaky brain. I found leaky gut almost invariably in people that suffered with mental health issues. That was my protocol, guys. That was my protocol. Fix their diet, fix cortisol, B12, vitamin D, magnesium, probiotics, all of the above. And I didn't guess. I saw it. Okay. Interesting, eh? Interesting article. Science is racing to find out why low-carb eating is helping with mental health. That was the headline. I found it fascinating. Okay, guys. I'm breathing. Okay. Really, really enjoyed our session. Okay, so if you have any questions, don't be shy. Ask questions. Friday is question and answer Friday, right? Those are always fun. Supercharged time. Guys, we love you dearly, and I mean that sincerely. I like that. That rhymes. Love you dearly. Thank you sincerely. Talk to you soon.